Hello and welcome to In Search for IT ROI. We are delighted to have you here today. My name is Sonika and I am your host. Your presenter is Sourabh Hajela, founder and executive editor of CioIndex. Hello, Sourabh. I can't hear you, Sourabh. Before we start, Sourabh, I just want to take a moment to address some housekeeping issues. This webinar will last for 1 hour. Sourabh will present for 45 minutes. The last 15 minutes will be spent answering any questions presented by you, the audience. Please note that the control panel is on the right side of your screen, which comprises of 3 panes and a grab tab. The first pane gives your details. The second is a quick reference guide about this webinar. The third pane allows you to submit any questions to me, your host. If there is a need for a broadcast message during this webinar, you will also be able to view it here. The Grab tab allows you to minimize the control panel to the side of your laptop. You can also download an attendee quick reference guide from our events page on CioIndex.com. In the event that you drop your connection, please dial back in. In the unlikely event that our connection is dropped, please wait 5 minutes and then dial back in. Make sure your microphone is on mute at all times. That's it for me. Over to you, Sourabh.
Thank you so much, Sonika. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to those of you who are in Europe and Asia. I am delighted to be with you this morning and talking about another key topic on the CIO's Index, which is how do you identify, select, fund, create, maintain, and communicate the value of IT. CIOs and most senior IT leaders are paid to make better decisions about IT. It's expected of them. And IT value is actually a central concept in making the right decisions about IT. So this webinar is about IT value, IT decisions, but unfortunately all of these things get jumbled into IT ROI. So I'm going to have to address the issue of IT ROI first, and then we're going to dive into the whole issue of IT value and IT decisions. And we're going to talk about a framework to make better decisions about IT using IT value metrics, which are very tailored and specific to IT decision making. Before we begin, Sonika, would you please push the first poll? Now, this is a question I'm asking for a reason, and that reason will be apparent as soon as you submitted the poll and we've seen the results and we start talking about this. So you've got a minute to respond to this poll. Okay, Sonika, have you pulled out the poll?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. The pressure on IT in general, and CIOs and IT leaders in specific, is on proving the value of IT. CEOs and other peers of CIOs, CMOs specifically, have been asking questions about IT and saying, what is it that you deliver in terms of value? How is it that you prove that you're delivering that value? The second reason why CIOs feel under pressure about IT value is because they want to communicate and want to be able to say what value they bring to the table. And the third reason is the CIOs themselves want to manage their organizations better and want to invest in activities that are creating value. So the three reasons are driving chief information officers in general and IT organizations in general to say, how is it that I can quantify, communicate, manage, track the value of IT? Now you can understand that IT is the biggest expense in any organization. I mean, typically the 50% plus of a large organization's budget is going into IT, and hence there's good reason for people to be asking, okay, am I spending the right amount of money? And in some instances, people are saying, am I spending it in the right areas, and should I be spending more money or less? There was recently a question that I had posted in our CIO community saying, how do you know that you're spending enough on IT? So generally people are saying spend less, but isn't the question about the right level also goes in the other direction, which says, are you spending enough? Should you be spending more? Should you be spending in other areas than the areas that you're spending them in? This pressure has led business leaders, chief information officers to say, how can I measure and track the investment returns on IT? Can we ensure that every dollar is spent towards a key strategic business requirement? Now, the other aspect that I mentioned before was how can one anticipate and fix IT problems, and how can you ensure consistent delivery on time within budget? All of these things require you to be able to measure IT value. Now, business leaders are asking, okay, what is IT's ROI? I have yet to come across an organization where a business leader is not asking that question. And by business leader, I'm including people such as the chief executive officer, and more prominently, in my experience, it has been the chief marketing officer who's been asking this question to say, hey, is IT creating enough value? Now, do business leaders, and I'm going to be specific here, do chief information officers ask the question that is marketing creating enough ROI? Is accounting creating ROI? What is the ROI created by human resources, the legal department, facilities management? In my experience, these questions, if asked, are not asked with the prominence that IT ROI takes. So these are, often muted. I don't delude myself into thinking this question is not asked, but is it asked with the same intensity and meaning as IT is asked about their ROI? And my experience says no. The reason for this is the CIOs have failed to understand and articulate their value, the value the IT organization brings to the table, and so the whole issue of IT value and IT ROI must be looked at, must be viewed in this context of why is it that there is such a tremendous amount of pressure on IT and only on IT to provide to the rest of the business that it is indeed acting and it is indeed creating value for the rest of the organization. Sonika, would you push the poll results, please, and let's see what they say.
Sure. Well, we had 71% of our audience that voted on this poll, and 55% of those based that they use ROI to measure IT performance, 23% their marketing performance. Only about 18% voted on the accounting ROI performance. Human resources came in at about 9%. 36% of those who answered the poll said it was none of the above.
Okay, so pretty consistent with what my observation has been, that predominantly IT is under pressure to prove its ROI. And this question is not being asked of other parts of the organization for a reason, and I suspect, and I believe this to be true, that the reason is that heads of IT have not done a great job in either identifying the value or communicating the value of IT, and hence it's being asked of them to prove it over and over again. Before we dive into this whole issue of IT decision-making, IT value in making better decisions about IT, I wanted to get us a better view, a better understanding of IT ROI and how it is a fundamentally flawed measure of IT value. I've listed a few reasons. There are a million more, but I'm going to focus on these because these are very easy to pick off IT ROI. Number one, IT ROI does not measure risk. We're going to take a deeper look at this in just 1 second. Number two, there are some things where you cannot measure them in dollars and cents. There are some things that you should not be measuring in dollars and cents. And then there are three other things that most ROI calculations, to my knowledge, miss. Number one, soft benefits. Number two, lost leaders, and I'll talk about that in a second. Those of you who have a marketing background understand what I'm referring to. And then the third is residual value. So when we look at ROI, these are, in my estimation, the top 6 reasons why ROI is a fundamentally flawed measure of IT value, and why, if you are measuring things just for the sake of measuring them, that's not going to result in better IT decisions. So the question, first of all, I want to get back to the whole question of, are you delivering IT value? The question that is being asked is not what's IT's ROI, but what's IT's value. And using ROI as a measure of IT value fundamentally defeats the purpose, fundamentally defeats the objective that you're trying to achieve. IT ROI, return on investment, calculations typically in a business case. I mean, you're trying to propose an IT project to your investment committee. The CIO is trying to gain some funding from the CEO for some special projects and investment. You now created a business case. Most people who create business case understand that they must put in a risk element. There are 3 elements that you put in. You put in business value, you put in cost, and you put in risk. Return on investment, by its very definition, misses risk. Now, what is the value of risk? Well, you understand that return on investment is just a promise, and risk basically makes sure, or comes in the way of your delivery against that promise. So you can say IT ROI estimates. First of all, just think about, all of us have done project estimates, and to my knowledge, none of these project estimates that I've seen in my 25+ years of working in this field have ever come to pass. Most of these, because there's a fundamental reason why they will not come to pass. You are sitting in a corner in IT trying to estimate what the return of some IT project is going to be when the project finally enables some business function and that business function hits the market. Good luck. Your estimates are not just going to be off by a few bucks, they're going to be off by orders of magnitude. But you and I have also been there to understand that the reason you're doing this is because you want project approval. You don't want your estimates to be low, hence you come up with very rosy estimates, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you have, when you start a project, your view of the situation is imperfect. You're sitting in an IT silo, typically not working with a business. If you are working with marketing, if you're working with the business function that you're enabling, chances of success are better, but not quite as good as they need to be in order for you to get better estimates of the returns or the cost. They're made with imperfect data. Think about every single situation in which you have created a business case. You're sitting there in isolation trying to make do with data, which does not include historical data on project performance. Very few people, very few organizations that I've seen actually have that data available to them. You don't have actual data of sales or market situation for you to make any sense of any value that you put against projected revenues. You come up with, and I've done it, so I'm not going to say you, I'm saying all of us come up with things such as cost avoidance. My God, I've never seen anything more nebulous or useless as cost avoidance, but we put it there. So in all, without risk, a business case cannot be trusted. We all know that. IT ROI, quite frankly, has become a project approval tool, not a project tracking, IT value tracking, project success tracking, or IT decision-making metric. They asked for a justification. Here's the justification. I'm giving it to you. It's bound nicely. We probably called in some nice consultant to do this for us. Here it is. And from that point on, nobody's going to look at it. The project gets over. Nobody's going to ask for it. That, unfortunately, is the reality of IT ROI. Some things cannot be measured. Like I said, if you can sit here today working on a business case for an IT project in an IT organization, and let's say you have your marketing support and they are helping you and they're working with you on something that says, okay, if I were to only implement this thing, I'm going to generate this potential payout. I am willing to bet money that you will be off by orders of magnitude. Number 3, IT project costs. Again, the normal inclination, because you're trying to get project approval, your normal inclination is to increase payout, and your normal inclination is to reduce costs. So there will be costs that you will not factor in. There will be costs that you'll inflate. Quite frankly, these are numbers that you're pulling out of thin air. You have very little basis. Anybody who's done a project estimate knows that there is maybe 20%, 30%, 40%. It's never 100%. It's not even approaching 80% justification for either of these two numbers. And the proof is always in the pudding. I'm going to ask this question, and I hope at that point you will respond honestly. How many of you have actually done estimates that you have then gone after the project is over and gone and measured how did we perform against those targets? A famous idiot said, we all know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns. The one we don't. What he was trying to tell you is, give me your money, don't ask too many questions because I don't have the answers. What he was also saying in a special way was that there is no way for me to know sitting here what's going to happen because I don't know. What I know, I don't want to tell you, and all I want from you is your money. Well, folks, all of us who've been there trying to justify an IT project can identify with this guy because we all know all we need at that point, because we are set that we want to do this project, all we want is an ROI calculation that says, okay, can we get this thing done? And it all depends upon the investment committee. It all depends upon who's on it, who's asking questions, that at the end of the day, any of these things will ever be explored. Greenspan came up with irrational exuberance. Once your mind is set, we are all IT people here, once our mind is set, once we want to do something, we want to make it happen. And we are using this ROI as an instrument to make it happen. Any human endeavor, I don't care whether it's an IT or outside, any human endeavor leaves the possibility of failure precisely because there are things that we don't know and there are things that are outside our sphere of influence. And providing a precise dollar amount, I'm not talking about measuring because I'm not opposed to measuring. Without measuring, you can't do anything, and I'm going to get back to that in a second. But I'm talking about ROI specifically, where the pressure is. Can you tell me what the payout is going to be 3 to 5 years out? Can you tell me what the cost is going to be as you execute this project? All of those things in the absence of some control mechanisms such as stage gating and stuff. We're not talking about those in this webinar. Those things start to lose meaning. And I would argue that none of these things has meaning right off the gate because of the way this whole ROI discussion, ROI tool is structured. We have taken a finance tool and trying to apply it to IT and internal investment. It's not a market-connected investment, and we're trying to make this thing work, and the results are as expected. People are more frustrated than they were when they asked you for IT value. Now, some things should not be measured. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is there are certain things that we are better off not trying to put dollars and cents on. There are certain types of investments. So let's take, for example, you are trying to put in a new email system in 2013, 2014. How much time, money, and effort do you want to spend on creating a cost justification for a new email system? There is a project that consumes 1% of your budget. How much time and effort do you want to put into the last buck, the last cent, the last item checked off to say, I really, really want to justify this. There are things that do not lend themselves to measurement. There are things that you shouldn't spend your time measuring. The whole point is better IT decisions. The whole point is not measuring things for the sake of measurement. I'm not going to give more examples for this item because they'll get controversial. Some of you are so seeped in this thinking of we must measure everything that, IT email systems are being measured, providing specific, metrics. There is a certain level of analysis that it requires, but quite frankly, it doesn't require the rigor that some of us are putting into this activity. No ROI calculation that I've seen factors in some soft benefits. What do I mean by soft benefits? Any activity that you undertake, and whether it results in success or failure, results in a few things happening. One is that the person or people who participated in an activity are now much better off than when they began. There may not be formal training. This informal training that happens by just doing something new, by just participating in an activity, is a soft benefit. How do you quantify it? Do you really want to spend time, money, and effort trying to quantify this benefit? The same thing is with intellectual capital. When you do something new, you create some new intellectual capital, some new process of doing, let's just say software development, for example, of software maintenance, for example. That things, so, some knowledge management aware companies capture that benefit, but that soft benefit, how do you quantify it? And quite frankly, these benefits, they are, everybody understands that they're there, but I would almost put them, and I'm qualifying that, we'll talk about this a little bit more, I would almost put them in the category of, let's not try to measure these, because quite frankly, trying to get to the dollar and cent on this factor is really not worth the time or the effort. You have created some new IC. You have trained some employees. So let's just say somebody was not very, smart in Java, is all of a sudden now a whiz in Java, and now comes the next project. How do you say what percentage of, what the first project did got transferred onto the next one? Because shouldn't that be subtracted from that project's ROI? Now, how do you factor value creation in our, let me give you a very concrete set of questions to say. If a project has a negative ROI or a low ROI, but it results in a tremendous amount of learning for the team, should you not undertake that? Should a failed project, which created these soft benefits, really considered a failed project? I mean, if you really, really are going to go religious about ROI calculations, that you ought to be able to answer these questions. And if I am leading a team that failed, but that produced a tremendous amount of learning for the organization, and that learning was transferred to the next project that succeeded, I would insist on getting credit for that. And I would, as a matter of practice, and for those who understand the whole realm of innovation, 95% of your investment in any innovation-related activity is going to fail. I don't remember these statistics offhand, but the rough number of businesses, new investment, what better definition of new investment than a new business investment, 95% of these investments don't survive after the first 3 years. So what does that tell you? That's the whole rationale, that's the whole reason behind portfolio-based approaches, because that the 2 to 3% that finally survive, those make it worth your while. So it's the portfolio's return, not the return on an individual item in a portfolio, that determines what you made or what you lost as a result of investments. Now, anybody who's in marketing understands this has been done for years. This is still being done. What happens is, car companies do this typically. They will produce a low-end car on which they're typically losing, and I believe Ford was losing on their smallest car, I forget its name, about $1,000 on every copy. They were selling it for $10,000, but they were losing $1,000 on every copy sold. So why is it that car companies decide to give away a car even though they're making a loss? Well, the theory there is that is creating brand awareness, that is creating an atmosphere in the marketplace where now People who use that product will graduate to bigger and better products, more value-producing products. Businesses typically undertake a lot of marketing in which they provide stuff for free. They just give away stuff. None of the stuff that I have seen anywhere being given away for free has ever been produced for free or bought for free. Sign up for a credit card, receive this set of glasses. Those glasses were not plucked off a tree, they were bought for a price, but they're loss leaders that result in you selling another product which has value. How does this factor into an ROI calculation? I mean, you in business, you are undertaking a project that you know. I mean, this right off the bat, you know this thing is going to lose money because you know that potentially there's an enormous impact on something that comes down the pipe. Most infrastructure projects. Now, imagine you're building a road. I'm not even getting into laying some sort of an architectural bus or trying to lay some infrastructure-related project. You know that that's a net cost. That project itself is not producing any value. Let me take something even more important and more controversial: enterprise architecture planning. When was the last time you saw enterprise architecture planning producing any value where it is the project itself? And for those companies that don't undertake enterprise architecture planning because there is no ROI related to that project, miss on a gazillion dollars worth of ROI and everything else that they do. So should IT undertake negative ROI projects because they have the ability to generate enormous returns down the road? Why is it that people are outsourcing things? Because they stop investing in training. Because what is training's ROI? Why is it that people now complain that our organization does not have the skills to undertake certain kinds of projects? Because you didn't spend the money to learn how to execute on those kinds of projects. These were the projects where you said, well, the ROI is negative, the ROI is non-existent, I can't do it, I don't want to do it. That's the result that today you find yourself spending a gazillion bucks trying to have somebody else do that thing for you. In your own careers, wherever it is that you didn't take a chance and you didn't say, I'm going to take this pay cut or I'm going to make this move to a different town away from my family because I'm learning something new, that's the negative ROI project that resulted in enormous benefits for you personally. So the net of what I'm trying to say here is that all of these factors and then some make ROI calculations absolutely, totally a flawed measure on which to base project decisions, IT decisions, or any other kind of decision that you're going to make about IT investments. Sonika, would you please push the next poll?
Sure.
Actually, Sonika, hold on one second. I forgot about residual value. Let me go through that. This is the most critical element in an IT setting.
No problem.
See, we've talked about trained employees. We've talked about intellectual capital. And yes, those are residual values that come out of any IT project. Now, all of us know software components that you develop in one project can easily be used. And more often than not, they are used in other projects. Infrastructure that you have deployed for one project is invariably used for other projects. Software tools, testing tools, for example, that you bought for one project can now be used for some other project. Deploy a technology, and now you're wedded to that technology. A lot of people talk about open source, interoperability, and all those wonderful things that sell, vendor tools, vendor software, vendor goods. But anybody who has been near an IT shop, forget doing anything with IT, understands that once you are in a technology, it's really not as open as you thought it was. It's really not as interoperable as you thought it was. Standards are lacking. Standards are not applicable. So the point of it all is that you now undertook a project that you implemented a technology, and now you fundamentally negatively impacted every project that's coming down the pike because everything has to be retooled, everything has to be reconsidered based upon your decision. Which project is going to take ownership of the negative ROI coming out of this? You created something positive. Which project, which is going to use whatever you created, is actually going to say, well, I'm going to use the software component developed by this other project, but I'm going to give them credit for that. Nobody does it because we know that that fundamentally negates the entire purpose for which we are doing a business case, which is to get the money. The issue, as I see it, and I always see it from the perspective of IT leadership, which I always equate to business leadership. The issue is better IT decisions. And better IT decisions are all about better IT metrics, not better ROI calculations or more rigor or more consultants or more money or more spreadsheets. That is a fundamental belief. Now, before we jump into how is it that we should measure IT investments? What is it that impacts IT's value? How do you measure, track, and communicate it? Sonika, please push the second poll. You've got a minute to respond to this, please. So, I'd really appreciate all of you responding to this poll. And honestly, please. Okay, I think that's enough time. Now, the whole discussion of IT decision making, IT value, IT ROI, IT governance, and IT alignment, they all basically start to intersect and lose their meaning in this big ball of wax that IT has become. And quite frankly, you can't really separate all of them beyond a certain point. IT alignment is typically one of the top 3 items, as we saw in the last presentation, last webinar a couple of weeks ago, that IT alignment is absolutely critical. We saw how is it that you can connect base level IT decisions with creating business value. Now I'm going to connect in this presentation the whole issue of IT alignment, better decisions, and IT value. I don't think a lot of people are debating at this point as to the meaning and the value of IT alignment. We saw that business capability and IT capability, when they are not aligned, shareholder value declines. You have really good on-paper IT projects that really fail to deliver any real value. You will typically see IT costs rising and the business value, the business revenues commensurate with that cost declining. You will also see employee churn, because you'll see employees who are dissatisfied because they no longer understand or they can't really articulate the value that IT in general brings to the company and what their work, how do they fit into this whole value creation, value cycle, is not really apparent to a lot of employees in the absence of business and IT not being aligned. In my last presentation, I made the point that IT exists to create shareholder value. And if there is a lack of a clear linkage between what you do on a daily basis, you implement software, you buy infrastructure, you implement and deploy infrastructure, what you do, hardware, servers, bits and bytes, if you do not connect the bits and bytes to dollars and cents, then you are really engaged in technology for technology's sake. Not a bad idea, but if you're a shareholder of that company, not a really great idea. Now, the value of alignment is understood. Everybody says, yeah, I know. We must be aligned. We should only do things that make business sense. What is in doubt most of the times is how do you actually do things that make business sense? How do you actually align business with IT? Business IT alignment is such a nebulous issue that a lot of people know when things are not in alignment, but few can say, how is it that I can actually do things that put me in alignment with the business. A lot of us have also experienced that business and IT, when I say business, I'm typically referring to things outside of IT. IT is as much business as anything else in the organization. So if you have your typical marketing function, you have typical accounting, HR, any of these functions, you'll notice that we seem to be living in a different world, talking a different language, and making the connection between these two worlds, making the connection between these two languages, the vernacular becomes so difficult. And in the last presentation, I tried to help this cause by going over some non-jargon, some jargon-free discussion, and hopefully those who attended gained something from it. The third issue comes in when people try to approach this whole issue top-down. You know, you start with business strategy, and as we saw the last time, we ought to be starting with business model, not with business strategy, and you take it all the way down. Well, the critical problem in that is that you miss little things such as the internet, because what the internet proved to all of us is, and this was not the first time, but the internet is recent, so you'll all remember, that IT can drive business value. It's not a one-way street. It actually is a two-way street, and hence the whole discussion on IT fusion. Again, I'm going to digress if I get into that here. Some people have used the concepts, and this is the most critical thing. If there's one thing you take away from this presentation today is that alignment and value are not interchangeable. Alignment may be a condition for value, but alignment is not a sufficient condition for value generation. So alignment and value, first of all, are two different things. They're related, but they're different. Number two, business IT alignment is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition for value creation. So what I'm trying to say is that just because you're in alignment does not mean that you are creating unprecedented business value. It doesn't, it actually, you know, you cannot say just because I'm in alignment, I'm now getting the biggest bang for the IT buck. This is the biggest concept that is missing from most discussions on business IT alignment, most discussions on IT value creation. The first concept, which is it's the business model, not business strategy, that needs to be aligned, that needs to be followed. The number two thing is that alignment and value are two different concepts. So all of us have this heightened awareness that business IT alignment is important, but we don't understand how that creates business value. What has happened over the last few years is that a whole bunch of approaches have been taken off the shelf, readily available. We've picked up things from finance. Well, it makes perfect sense. If it works for Wall Street, it's got to be good. Let me try it. And most of the time, what we've done to ourselves is taken all of these approaches and templates and tools and really not adapted them for use for an internal investment, which is IT. Internal investments, by their very definition, have characteristics that do not lend themselves to calculations such as return on investment. Sonika, would you please push the poll results? This would be a good starting point for the stopping point for us.
Sure. We had 82% that voted on this poll. 22% believe that IT ROI is good for measuring IT value. Yeah, that is getting the biggest bang for the IT buck. 31% believe that it is to make better decisions about IT. 35% believe that communicating the value of IT to the business is what IT ROI is good for. 43%, the biggest chunk, believe that it was all of the above. And only about 12% believe that it is none of the above. So there is something in addition to the options that we provided, you know, that IT ROI is good for.
Good. I think this is pretty consistent with what I was expecting the results to be. I think ROI is one of the measures that can be used for these purposes. I, for one, am in support of supplementing the ROI measure with a whole bunch of other things, and we're going to talk about some of them here. And when I say supplementing, I'm actually saying measure. Measurement is absolutely important. It's absolutely critical, but measure correctly. And the only measure, the only metric cannot be dollars and cents. So getting back to our thing of IT alignment approaches and taking from the business world, from the finance world in particular, some approaches have a very narrow focus and some approaches have a very broad focus. We are either not quantifying anything because we're in this nebulous land where we say, okay, just because I've got a nice, neat PowerPoint slide, that should suffice. On the other hand, we've gone to the extreme of saying, well, I want to quantify this to the last dollar and cent. Data collection, I remember for 1 year this company collecting data to support their balanced scorecard. Major interfaces being built, major dollars being spent, consulting companies coming and going. And they were really heavily into creating this ultimate balanced scorecard. Well, for an activity which is at a 50,000-foot level, and we've discussed this in this presentation itself, what point is being served by you getting into so seriously and heavily into creating data and data feeds and all of these wonderful things, trying to get to the last dollar and last cent, when you know that by the time you're done collecting that data, all of the underlying assumptions that you began with are not going to be of any value. But people do it, all the power to them. I'm in support of a more intelligent use of these techniques, and balanced scorecard is definitely one of my favorites. It's a really nice tool, but again, use in moderation and use intelligently. So what is it that IT has that needs to be addressed and these techniques not addressing? So I'm going to boil it down to a few things that we need to know and we need to understand. Are we in alignment? And how do we know for sure? And if you're not in alignment, then what is this misalignment costing us? Are we losing money? Are we losing value? How much value? How do we get in alignment? What will it cost to get that alignment going? When will it, if we were to spend the money, be aligned, how would we know that we're aligned? How do we stay aligned? And is this effort worth the money? So I'm going to repeat this, that most of the approaches like financial frameworks and other approaches that have been taken off the shelf and applied to IT, quite frankly, don't fit an internal investment, and we are not seeing the results. And for those of you who are out there talking to the business and living with your business counterparts, know that the level of satisfaction has not gone up much higher than it was before you implemented that perfect balanced scorecard. I'm going to go over some questions, some decisions that IT leaders make on a daily basis, because I want to make the connection, just like we made the connection between bits and bytes and dollars and cents. I want to make the connection between the decisions that you make on a daily basis and IT value and IT alignment and IT ROI, for the lack of a better word. If you look at the typical decisions that you make them along 3 dimensions. You have investment decisions that you have to make every day. You have asset decisions that you have to make every day, and you have organizational decisions you have to make every day. Take, for example, should I hire people? Should I, lay off people? What kind of people should I hire? On the revenue side, how much value did we create last year? Are there investments that we should be focusing in the right areas? Are we spending the right amount of money? Where are we spending? Those are the kinds of decisions that you're making. Infrastructure and asset, you are again going through the same decision making. Should we buy this new technology? Should we outsource? Should we get this thing internally? Should we develop? Should we train? All of these decisions are being made by leaders on a daily basis. Now, if you were to ask yourself, wouldn't it be nice for me to be able to make these decisions knowing fully well, A, when I made the decision, I made the right one. B, I can track my progress, and C, when I'm done, I can actually see whether I actually made an impact or not. And D, whatever impact I made, I'm going to carry over. What am I carrying over, and what is its value? So what I'm really advocating for here is a practical approach, because we have to start with saying that I want to make better decisions about IT. What I'm also saying is it has to be quantitative. You have to be able to measure things. What I am really trying to get people away from is the thinking that quantitative means ROI. What I'm also saying is that any approach that we pick today must be integrated. So one of the things that I really like about the balanced scorecard It's that it's integrated across the enterprise. So IT has a balanced scorecard that then ripples into, marketing has one. Everything ripples into eventually the CEO's balanced scorecard. I love that concept. Every single framework that you use must have the ability to tell you at the decision level, what is it that you did right, what is it that you did not do correctly. Any framework that you use must also be iterative, that you know from experience that when you do something the first time, typically the chances of success are limited. As you do it the second time, they improve. So you build upon your previous success. So any framework that is applied to IT, an internal investment, must be iterative because we want to learn from what we have done previously. And then my biggest factor, which is ease of use, because we all know that things that are complicated are things that always remain on the shelf. We are proud of the fact that we invested in that thing, but rarely, if ever, use it. And when we do use it under pressure, for example, a lot of organizations use the balanced scorecard because they are required to. I would really question some of the balanced scorecards I've seen in the analysis and stuff that has gone into it, and I would question the decisions that have been made as a result of using that balanced scorecard. I've developed a framework called IT value mapping, and it's open source. It's available readily. There's nothing hidden here. Basically, value mapping creates these value tracks or paths through which you can achieve value. You can clearly see what value a particular track brings. You can clearly see the result of different decisions. So you can do a what if, that if I were to make this decision versus something else, then you can actually see the result on value. You can see the current IT capability and its alignment and its value. You can see all the planned activities or decisions that you make before you actually spend a single dollar on them. What would be the impact on alignment and on value? I don't have a lot of time here, so I'm going to fly through some of the slides, and I'm happy to schedule another session to go deeply into this. But for now, we're just going to have to make do with this flight. So we're going. The framework goes top to bottom. It seamlessly links business model with your IT decisions. It goes left to right. It links key components of IT capability, and we talked about IT capability and business capability in the webinar we did a couple of weeks ago. It also recognizes the relationship, its hierarchical relationship of these components, and it links them to, like I said, the decisions and the specific applications. It links external events and their impact on your IT capability, value, and alignment, and the decisions that result from changes in your environment. There are 10 basic tenets to what I consider value creation. Those 10 tenets are in this framework. Number one, I believe that any organization can be modeled using a single framework. So soup to nuts, you can, and in my estimation, a balanced scorecard has done a tremendous job in proving that any organization can be modeled using a single framework. I also believe that business capability and IT capability can be quantified and they can be visually depicted. I also believe that a business model is a focal point, not business strategy. Business model is a focal point of any organization. Everything that the organization does must be in alignment, driven by it, and anything that you do that changes the business model must revert back, and business model must be changed before you start to take action against that activity. I also believe that IT is a business, and it's an internal business, it's a service business internal to the organization that it serves. If you start to think in terms of IT projects, then you're defeating the purpose. Think of IT investments. If you think of business capability, you must think of IT capability. If you think of CEO, you must think of CIO as the head of an internal services business. I also believe that IT capability has two dimensions. They're interrelated but distinct: alignment and value. There are three imperatives for value creation, and in a second we're going to look at those three imperatives. Number one, strategic alignment. We've been talking about alignment ad nauseum. Number two, process coverage. And number three, asset productivity. These are the three critical imperatives for value creation. I'm going to go through, just skim over them for now. We can talk about them later. IT value must be measured number one, it should be measured. Number two, it should be measured using metrics specifically tailored for the purpose. That is, a step away from dollar-denominated measurement, and B, using financial measures without modification is a very, very risky thing. It's a disaster waiting to happen. I also believe that IT capability is built iteratively, that is, in multiple learn and do cycles. I also believe that all IT decisions, servers, people, assets, projects, are subordinate to IT value and alignment. So you must make any decision in the context of its ability to align to the business model specifically, and to creating value. And finally, but not the least, the need to make better IT decisions must drive any analysis of IT's capability. That is, it's all about better IT decisions and nothing else. I want to go over one point that I made, and then I'm going to show you some nice charts and graphs to cap off this presentation because I'm already over time. When we think of IT value, there are three absolute imperatives for IT value. One is strategic alignment. That is, you're undertaking activities that are in alignment with the most value-creating side of your business. That is, you've aligned IT capability with your business capability. That is, that now your business model is aligned with your IT's model. Number two, asset productivity, which means that whatever you have invested in any asset, whether it's a server or it's a person, the utilization of that asset is of primary importance. And number three, process coverage. Of all the different things that you can do to create value, have you picked only a few? Have you picked them all? Have you picked them in the order in which they have the ability to create value? These three are imperatives for creating any IT return on investment, IT value, any discussion surrounding IT. I want to show you a diagram that comes out and that visually depicts business value and IT value and alignment. Anybody who looks at this picture for a moment, if you were to say that this indeed can be created, can see clearly that business and IT are not in alignment. If the tool supports something that says I can now do analysis that can tell me specifically what I need to do to make these two in alignment, then that tool would be of tremendous value to the IT organization. That's the whole point with IT value mapping. You can also see the second question that I have asked, are we spending enough money on IT? Are we spending it on the right activities? Here again you can see that there are certain areas that require more coverage are receiving less coverage. There are certain areas that require less coverage are receiving more dollars. This is a diagram that in one picture shows you that you need to change your fundamental investment strategy in IT. You should also be able to see, and this is what this diagram depicts, if you're spending over, what is that area where you're spending over? What is a specific category? What is a specific application, infrastructure, person? What is it that you made a decision which resulted in this overspending on an area that did not require that much money to be spent? And one more thing, it's completely linked to project portfolio rationalization. You must be able to see what investments are producing returns, which ones are not. Stage gating is included in this, so you now need to be able to see along the track from inception to delivery and after. You should be able to see what are the areas that created the most value, which ones are not, how do I get out of that. Typical decision that some organizations make is the outsourcing decision. You can use the tool to see the different providers, how do they meet your requirements. You can see the impact before and after. You can see business value versus IT value as a result. And you can see for enterprise architecture planning purposes, you can now track the value creation over time. You can see what currently we projected. You can see what it became over a period of time. And hopefully you're seeing a complete total alignment over your strategic horizon, which typically is 3 to 5 years. You should typically be able to use this tool to create a nice IT strategic plan over a week, and for large organizations about 6 to 8 weeks. Folks, this is it. If there are questions, I'm really delighted that all of you took the time to join us for this presentation today. Sonika, have we posted the poll results for the second one, or are we pretty much done?
We have posted the poll results. I do have quite a few questions, but we are hard-pressed for time. So I'll start with the first one, which was the most basic question that I got, and that is, what is a good ROI?
I think ROI calculations, I'll make it simple. I think a good ROI is one that you measure after the project is over and you use for your subsequent activities. Typically people start to use hurdle rates, people use all sorts of measures. In my book, if any ROI calculation that results in you achieving your hurdle rate is a good ROI, any ROI that results in better decisions is a good ROI.
If ROI is not a good measure, then how do we measure and track project success? How can we do project portfolio rationalization, which you briefly touched on at the end?
The whole idea is to measure. The measurement doesn't have to be in dollars and cents is the point I'm trying to make. The measurement has to be in measures. There are many, many different measures available, and usually 2x2 matrices serve the purpose. I've seen Harvey Ball related frameworks that serve the purpose. You ought to be able to measure, quantify, and then compare. So any tool that does that without putting the burden of you now coming up with numbers out of thin air, trying to prove the ROI of a particular thing, is a good tool or framework to use.
The next question that I have here is, it starts with a comment and then is followed by a question. IT ROI should not just be a responsibility of the CIO. Other CXOs are equally responsible for using IT towards productive use and hence have a responsibility to disclose its benefits. Isn't all the negativity around IT due to unaligned business and IT?
Really, really well put, because the way I look at this issue is, if you ever saw a football game or a soccer match or whatever, and you now saw at the end of the game you tried to say, hey, what was the ROI of the defensive team? Now I'm not equating, I just want to make it clear, IT is not defense, but I'm just trying to give you an example to say that if the defense didn't score a goal or didn't score a touchdown, then are you really suggesting that without defense, offense could have won the game? And my entire point has been that it's a business project that has ROI. So if I have a project that touches the market and I can really truly assess the returns, because the market is the only place where returns come from, then yes, ROI is a good measure, and that's where business and IT fundamentally should get together and only work on business projects, not IT projects or marketing projects or any other kinds of projects. So this question is brilliant. I really like it, and I believe that the fundamental issue is a fundamental disconnect between business and IT, and I think there is a political game that goes on where we start a project, and before we start a project, we want to be able to find the fall guy. And that's the game that's played repeatedly every single day, and that's why we don't have the connection and the success that we could have if that chasm could be bridged.
Saurabh, another one of our audience members would like to know, why is there no or little pressure on marketing for ROI?
Because marketing has done a terrific job of creating a position. And this is all in people's minds. Marketing has done a tremendous job of creating a value proposition that cannot and is not questioned. So when you talk to a typical CEO, and if you say, what is your marketing's ROI, they will look back at you as if you have horns, and this is the brilliance of marketing. Well, they're really good at marketing, and hence they've succeeded in this. They have done a tremendous job of making it so that nobody pressures them to justify where is it that they're spending their dollars. Now let's not take it completely to an extreme and say that they don't, because a lot of marketing people do justify the projects that they undertake and the return on investment, but the pressure is really not the same as it is on IT.
Thank you, Saurabh. We have time for just one more question, and that let me pick that up from here. I think the most appropriate one now would be, how can the IT organization then better communicate the value of IT to the business?
I think one of the critical things is to work with the business to identify the projects that you're going to undertake. So I would say that IT should not work on IT projects. It must always insist on working on a business project. And that means that you lose some of the ownership, some of this pride of ownership that IT typically has, that says, okay, I executed on this project to say, I'm going to share the chair with the business, and I'm going to share the responsibility, and I'm going to share the spoils. And one of the things that comes out of this is that the business then starts to take on more ownership for not just the success, but the failure, God forbid, should there be failure, of a particular project. It's absolutely critical that IT work on business projects. This ensures that the business is now working with you. They understand your problems as you go along. They're not adversarial. All of the various issues about business IT misalignment start to disappear the moment you have an IT organization that is working in partnership with their business counterparts.
I think we are just about out of time, Saurabh. So what I'd like to do now is I have a couple of questions that I am answering, and then we should all be done. And I just wanted to thank everybody here today for joining us. And also like you to know that you will be receiving a feedback survey by email on this webinar. Your response to the survey is really appreciated and of great value to us as we continually strive to improve upon what we deliver to our members. Our next webinar in the series, which is Creating a Business Within a Business, a model for the IT organization, is scheduled for March 13th. You can register for it at CioIndex.com. You will also find a complete list of our upcoming webinars there. Thank you once again for joining us today. Should you choose to exit, you can exit by simply clicking on the X on your control panel and choosing File and then Exit. Thank you so much and have a great day.